Welcome one, welcome all to DeFi Crypto and Airdrops, DeFi High, brought to you by DeFi University. And David, how's it going, brother?
Outstanding, Mike. Doing well today, man. Ready to rock and roll. We've got a lot to get through, man. Here, let me just pop on in. Let me start things off and share my screen, man. We've got the lesson that we left off on from yesterday. I think it was lesson 6. Yeah.
I believe we finished with lesson 6. I believe we're on lesson 7 now.
Okay. Why it's hard to cheat. So we got through what is a blockchain, how transactions get verified. And now we got to go to lesson 7. Okay. Why it's hard to cheat. Why blockchains are immutable. Well, let's see here. Let's go down and just take a look at some of these images. So let's see here. It looks like puzzle pieces. And by the way, Mike, I've regenerated all of these images for DeFi High School. And I'm going to be putting it all together today, tomorrow. I'll have it all like done by the end of this week. So that'll be great. Puzzle piece analogy. Okay, so it says tamper evident in the unintelligible hallucination right there. And then let's see here. What is a hash? Why changing history fails? Okay, that'll be good. Input hash, output hash. All right. And the 51% attack. Why it's so hard. Okay, so that's attacking a network. Okay, smaller networks are riskier. Great. So let's go ahead and play this video content and let's learn about why blockchains are immutable.
Hey, everyone. So you've probably heard the word immutable thrown around when people talk about blockchains, right? That once something is on the chain, it's there forever. But what does that actually mean? How is that even possible? Well, today we're going to break down exactly why changing the past on a major blockchain is so ridiculously hard. All right, so let's get right into it. The whole idea behind a blockchain, I mean the real genius of it, is that it solves this huge digital problem. Think about it. In a world where you can copy, paste, delete, and edit pretty much anything with a click, how do you create a digital record that no one can secretly mess with? How do you build trust right into the code itself? That's the core question. Okay, to really wrap our heads around this, let's use an analogy. Forget about code for a second. Just picture a massive 10,000-piece jigsaw puzzle. It's already been put together, and it's sitting right there in the middle of a busy public square. And here's the key part. Everyone, and I mean everyone, has a perfect photo of the finished puzzle on their phone. Okay, so with that picture in mind, what happens if you try to cheat? Let's say you sneak in and try to swap out just one single piece. Well, a few things would happen immediately, right? First, your new piece probably won't even fit. The little interlocking shapes won't line up. Second, even if you jammed it in there, the picture on it would look totally wrong against all the pieces around it. But most importantly, it wouldn't match the thousands of photos that everyone is holding as proof. Somebody would notice instantly. The whole
Ah,
system polices itself because it's so public and so interconnected.
wow. So does that mean that like I guess there have been instances where one node or one validator set tries to sneak in, something that is fraudulent to the chain? That must mean that there have been, nodes or validators that have tried to do that, maybe intentionally or unintentionally in the past on all of these different chains, Bitcoin, Ethereum, all its layer twos, Solana, Sui. I bet that there have been a lot of instances of this. And that's why slashing exists, right? For the proof of stake networks. What about for the proof of work networks? If they're trying to inject something malicious, I wonder. But yeah, so that's an interesting note.
So, that's a cool analogy, but how do we actually do that in the digital world? You can't have physical puzzle pieces. The answer lies in something called a cryptographic hash. This is the real magic ingredient. It's what acts like those interlocking edges for our digital puzzle pieces. So, what on earth is a hash? You can just think of it like a unique digital fingerprint for any piece of data you can imagine. You take some data, say a list of transactions, you run it through this super complex math formula, and it spits out this long, unique string of letters and numbers. That string, that fingerprint, represents that exact data and nothing else.
Huh. So, Mike, when you submit a transaction and you have the transaction hash, and you can take that hash and throw it into a scanner, like Etherscan or Basescan, and
Yeah.
yeah. So I think that must be what this is referring to. Those cryptographic hashes. That's pretty cool, man.
Well,
For anyone,
just so that I fully understand, that's to track, basically like transactions. Like if you do a transaction, you need to know the hash to know what status it's in. If it's processing, if it's completed, that sort of thing, right?
exactly. And so we could actually show that. So over here on Etherscan, if I just pop in and take a look at this real quick, how about maybe I've got a hash here that, or we could just take a look at one of these latest transactions. So here's the transaction. This is just some random transaction for $50. And we've got the transaction hash right there. So this, if we copy this transaction hash and then just paste this into the search, then we're going to, be brought to the same page, and we can learn all sorts of things about this transaction. This is just some random transaction that I just
Yeah,
found on Instagram.
where it came from, like what wallet address it came from, where it went to, a lot of pertinent information like that. And this is when they talk about transparency on chain. That's what this is, and that's why I'm such a proponent to where I think governments, like
Yes,
our tax dollars, all transactions, all tax dollars should be on chain to where it's fully transparent. We get to see, we don't have to worry about the government auditing itself, like the Pentagon missing, 8 different freaking audits. They failed 8 different fucking audits.
right.
And, all this fraud that's going on, in our government and, around the world, it would be eliminated almost overnight. We'd be able to see and audit our own government, that's using our money. It's that's the important thing to understand. That's why I'm so bullish on crypto. And it's well, one of the many reasons. I would love to see that the US government, budget and how they spend our tax dollars on chain so that we can, have full transparency on how they're spending it and how they're wasting it.
I agree 100%. And this would be an easy way to do it. It's not like it can't be done. It could be done now. And Mike, from the lesson that we went through yesterday, the final lesson, I think it was lesson 6, I guess, where at the end of the lesson, it was talking about confirmations and the number of confirmations you need until a block becomes finalized. Well, you can see that right here with this random transaction. I pulled up the hash. Here's the transaction details. I can see the block that this transaction is in, and I can see the number of confirmations. So the number of blocks produced since. So if I click through to that specific block, then I can see, okay, well, that transaction, this block is still unfinalized. So, just learning how the blocks get created and then linked to another block in the chain. Really, really cool, man. Really cool. So we're learning this from the ground up. And let me go ahead and bring it back. Let's continue on with cryptographic hashes.
And here's what makes it so powerful. This process is really easy to do, but it's totally impossible to undo. You take your data, like Sun5BTC from Alice to Bob, you run it through the function, and bam, out comes the hash. But, and this is absolutely crucial, you can't take that hash output and work backwards to figure out what the original data was. It's a complete one-way street. And this leads to this really amazing property called the avalanche effect. Check this out. If you change even the tiniest detail in the input, I mean, you change one letter or you change the transaction from 5 BTC to 6 BTC, the output hash doesn't just change a little bit, it becomes completely, wildly, unrecognizably different. And that is what makes tampering so screamingly obvious. And this is how it all comes together to create that unbreakable chain. See, each new block of transactions doesn't just hold its own data, it also holds the hash, that unique fingerprint of the block that came right before it. So think about what happens if you try to go back and change something in an old block. Its data changes, right? Which means its hash changes. But that hash was recorded in the next block. So now that link is broken. You'd have to change that next block, which would change its hash, breaking the link to the next one, and on and on and on. In
And,
this huge
and real quick, this is what we were talking about yesterday, where early on it happened with Bitcoin. Somebody tried to mint a bunch of fake Bitcoin, and the chain itself automatically noticed that and corrected itself. It didn't allow that to occur. So that's what this is talking about. Is it's double and triple checking, like, again, all the previous blocks through this hash. If the hash has been tampered with, or it shows that a previous block has been tampered with, or that block, then it says no. Instantly we're going to start, we're going to find out what's going on here. And all of this is done automatically. It's not like there's, people that are monitoring this. The chain itself is monitoring this.
Exactly. And it's a cryptographically secure ledger. It's a blockchain. That's what they are, cryptographically secure ledgers. Now imagine what you could apply this technology to. Imagine if this were applied to voting. Like, isn't that kind of a no-brainer? Apply this to voting. What about the military budget that you were talking about?
Oh, yeah.
All government spending,
all of it.
all of it.
Yeah, no, it's yeah, I'm a huge, I wonder, taking it to an extreme, I kind of wonder why we need elected officials. If we can vote for ourselves,
It should be a DAO.
if we can vote for
Yeah.
ourselves, every person could have a vote. And I mean, the only thing that sucks is that a lot of people today, not to be negative, but a lot of people today are fucking idiots. And we'd have a bunch of idiots voting for, freaking, shit like, reparations, for, or something like that, to make themselves feel better and bankrupt the freaking the country. So that might not be a good thing, just because we don't have a very smart population.
Well, U.S. federal government run by a DAO might not be such a bad idea.
Yeah.
But, this should at the very least be applied to finance, and
Yes.
it
Yes.
should be applied to voting,
Yes.
at the very least. And it's just think of the power of this technology. So
all the way to the present. You didn't just swap one puzzle piece. You literally broke the entire puzzle from that point forward. Okay, so if the math is that airtight, is it just impossible to cheat? Well, not in theory. And this brings us to probably the most famous and honestly the
imagine if, the U.S. government was put on chain, it's controlled by a DAO, and North Korea tries to like 51% attack it or something.
Right.
Right.
most misunderstood way someone could try to attack a blockchain, the 51% attack. So, what is a 51% attack? Basically, it's when one single person or a coordinated group manages to get control of more than half of the entire network's computing power, what's called the hash rate. If you could do that, you could, in theory, create your own version of the transaction history that grows faster than the honest one. And with that power, you might be able to reverse your own recent payments or even block other people's transactions from going through.
Now, haven't there been a handful of, famous, successful 51% attacks recently? What about Monero? Wasn't Monero the subject of a 51% attack? I think
Honestly, I can't speak intelligently on that. I know that something happened with Monero, but I don't know enough details to comment.
yeah, I think it was some like firm, either Cubic or Qubit, starts with a Q. I think that they 51% attacked Monero, but not for like a malicious purpose. They just wanted to like own the chain, I guess. I could be wrong about that. I could be just making stuff up. You probably have to verify this for yourself, but something like that. So there have been a handful of them. I know that there have been at least two successful 51% attacks in the last like 24 months.
Which, leads to a pretty obvious question. If this is a known theoretical possibility, why isn't a huge network like Bitcoin or Ethereum constantly under threat? Why do we still consider them to be so secure? Well, the answer isn't just about some clever piece of code. It comes down to something much more simple and brutal, really. It's about cold, hard economics. For a massive global network, the cost of actually pulling off an attack like this is so mind-bogglingly high that it just becomes completely and totally irrational to even try. And really, you can boil it all down to this simple imbalance. The potential gain you could get from, say, reversing a few of your own transactions. It's absolutely dwarfed by the guaranteed astronomical cost of buying and running all the computer hardware you'd need to control the network in the first place. You would have to spend billions of dollars for the chance to maybe steal back millions.
So, what if by proxy you were able to gain 51% control of a network? And here's what I mean by that. In the United States, there are a handful of really big Bitcoin miners. I don't know, Mara, maybe. There's a handful of others, and they basically control like more than 50% of the hash rate, I
Yeah,
believe, on the Bitcoin network. So,
cumulatively.
yeah, cumulatively. So, no single miner, but
Yeah.
together, American miners running Chinese hardware control more than 51% of the hash power for the Bitcoin network. So you could, if you were an evil genius or something, think of a situation where somehow, those miners collude in order to, change the chain somehow. I don't know what they would gain from that, but they don't have to spend anything to, get control of the network. They already own it. They already own the hash power.
And
So
but it would make you wonder, as soon as people realized that it had been compromised like that, most people would dump Bitcoin. So it'd almost be, self-defeating. It's because if the value goes to next to nothing, they would basically destroy their revenue stream. They destroy their profits.
true. Yeah. Unless they framed it as an upgrade to Bitcoin. So I don't know.
Math just doesn't add up, not even close. And I'm not talking about small amounts of money here. We are talking about an upfront cost that is well into the billions of dollars just for the specialized computer chips. And that's before you even think about the ongoing electricity bill, which would be like powering a small country. It is just an absolutely insane amount of capital. So, this is a really crucial point. This incredible economic security comes directly from size and decentralization. A massive network like Bitcoin has this gigantic economic wall protecting it. But what about smaller, less established blockchains? Well, they have way less computing power defending them, which means it can actually be feasible to rent enough power to attack them. And this isn't just a theory, it has actually happened to smaller chains.
Right, right, right. So that's what I was talking about. I think that there have been a handful of smaller chains that have successfully been 51% attacked. So,
So, yeah, in this world, size really, really matters. Okay, so does all this mean you have absolutely nothing to worry about? Well, not quite. The core blockchain protocol itself might be like a fortress, but the world that's been built around it, the whole ecosystem, has its own set of weak points. And actually, before we get to the real world risks, it's worth pointing out that the blockchain's defense has multiple layers. It's not just the hashes. For one, the more time that passes and the more blocks that get added, the more secure a transaction becomes. Then there are the economic incentives that actually make it profitable for miners to be honest. And if all else fails, the human community itself can coordinate to fight back against an attack. It's what you'd call a defense in depth strategy.
huh.
So,
What do they call that? Defense in depth. Huh.
where do things actually go wrong? Well, the real dangers usually aren't in the chain itself. They're in flaws in the applications built on top of it. You hear about these as smart contract bugs.
Right.
Or honestly, it's often simple user error, like someone losing their private keys or falling for a phishing scam. And a big one is hacks of the centralized
Voluntarily giving away their seed phrase,
I
just
know.
through ignorance, and I don't mean that, calling them stupid, but just, they just don't know better. They have an issue. I mean, anytime I've ever had like a issue with Coinbase or something like that, and I've, tried to go to their Discord or, it boggles my mind that these, multi-million dollar, billion-dollar companies use Discord for customer service, but I digress.
Yeah,
You
that's
go in
crazy.
there and you say, hey, I'm having an issue, and you got bombarded by spam of, hey, just send me your seed phrase and I'm happy to help you, and if somebody's new, they don't know any better, and potentially they compromise their own wallet.
So, does Coinbase still use Discord for customer service?
I let me check real quick before I say it.
Yeah,
Um,
because that would be horrible.
no, well, not Coinbase. I should have phrased that different. Like Aerodrome still uses it. Most of the like DeFi protocols, and and most of the different crypto chains and things like that. Like, yeah, Aerodrome is the big one. That's the example I should have used. Sorry.
Yeah, so
Um,
Aerodrome, man, even Aerodrome, like I don't understand, Mike, why DeFi protocols use Discord for customer service at all.
yeah,
And you're right, there are so many of them, and almost all of them use Discord in some way for customer
yeah,
service. It makes no sense to me whatsoever because the moment that you log on to Discord and go to their server, you're going to instantly be bombarded with spam,
yeah.
just like you said. And the spam is all going to be, it's going to be really difficult to discern whether it's real or not. Because the way that accounts are kind of created on Discord, it's really, really easy to make a lookalike account where there's just like one character that's different in the username, but
Dude,
everything else looks identical.
in our DCA Discord, freaking, there's probably 8, 9, 10 that I've seen so far. People trying to impersonate me, and that's why everybody knows, and all the mods know. As soon as they see anybody trying to impersonate me, it's instant ban. Just
Yeah.
because people trust the name, and so but yeah, they'll add like a decimal point in between veteran crypto or at the end of it, or it just very small things that you might not notice. So yeah, be very, very, very careful because being this early in crypto, it's there's a lot of very crafty people out there that know how to steal your liquidity.
It's horrible, man. And that's why I'm not on Discord. I don't manage or run a DeFi University Discord. I stay off of Discord. I also stay off of Telegram as much as I possibly can, just because it's so the spamming and the scamming is so prevalent on those platforms that I just stay off of them. So,
I can I can show you how to do a Discord to where, I mean, we do our the mods and the community in there do a really good job of keeping it clean. We haven't had any issues with anybody getting scammed because everyone knows as soon as something scammy comes up or they try to spam anything, they're on it like a fat kid on a donut.
I like donuts, so that's the phishing type scam, and that's I
Yeah.
think, wouldn't you say, Mike, that's probably one of the most prevalent ways that people lose money in crypto, just user error, their own user error, or falling for a phishing scam.
Or just like I've said before, I mean, we all make mistakes when we're learning. I've sent crypto to the wrong address, to the Genesis address of, the old Matic. It's Pole. I very early on, I was, copying and pasting and not sending test transactions, and is before I really learned. And I sent a couple $1,000 of Matic
Yeah.
to, you know, a black hole basically to never to return, So, it's when you're early to a tech like this, I mean, there's a lot of responsibility on you. And it's what David was talking about the other day. With liberty and freedom comes responsibility, and it's not just crypto. This is just in general in life. It's you can live in a free society, full of liberty, and you can have your freedoms, or you can live in a draconian society where there's a lot of rules and regulations and the government runs everything and tells you what you can and can't do, and you're safe.
Sounds like California, Mike.
Yeah.
Did you just
Oh,
describe California?
exactly. So, it's there, you need to understand, and it's a lot of it is on us to understand, these nuances and, and how to keep ourselves safe. And part of that is a great community, like, DeFi University or, DCA and, Blockchain Basement has a great, Drew over there has a great community that's, looks out for their people, but make sure that you know who you're talking to. And, if they ever ask any personal information whatsoever, instantly red flag should go up.
Yep. If anyone ever asks you for personal information or your seed phrase,
Mhm.
really, if someone asks you for your seed phrase, you know that person's a scammer.
Yes.
And so, these things, what can go wrong? Well, when you're operating in DeFi and in crypto, smart contract bugs, that could be malicious, it could be not malicious, but regardless, a smart contract bug can lead to you losing your money. So And there's not a whole lot you can do about that except reading the audits of each of these DeFi protocols before you decide to commit capital. And just reading the audits for someone who's beginning, you have no idea what you're looking at. So instead of just trying to read them, if you look to see if the protocols are audited, and if they're not, you should not be using them. So number one, look to see that they're audited. And number two, go on Google, Gemini, and search for top tier crypto and DeFi auditing firms. And you'll see a list of a handful of them. And if one of the audits is from one of these top tier firms, then you're probably okay, or at least as okay as you can be. There's always going to be the potential for some type of bug. So that's a risk that you've just got to be aware of. The phishing scams and the scammers, they are
like crypto exchanges.
They are everywhere. They are everywhere.
Damn it,
Cletus.
Damn it, Cletus.
So these, you got to just watch out for scams and never, give your seed phrase to anyone for any reason ever. And then, this type of stuff, the malicious hackers, they're out there and they're trying to exploit bugs in smart contracts. Mm-hmm. So you can't really, just do your best not to interact with anything fishy, and you'll probably be able to avoid these guys. And
anything that smells fishy is never good. Don't mess with anything that smells fishy.
Exactly. You get that weird feeling in your gut. If your spidey sense goes off and says, hey, there's something wrong here. Well, there's probably something wrong. And, this last one, I don't know what Cletus is going to say about this one, but if I had to guess, I would say just make sure that if you hold assets on the Bitcoin network, that you don't try to send that to the Bitcoin Cash chain. Or if you hold assets on Ethereum, if you want to send it to a dApp on Arbitrum, you've got to first bridge. So the chains, just making sure you're on the correct chain. And, when we were,
in navigating that, it's that is where communities are great. Asking, communities like, oh, hey, what bridge do you use? Or, hey, I'm trying to move ETH from here to here. Now, if they start giving you like addresses of where to send it, that's a different story. But if they're just like, all right, hey, I use dBridge to, move my, my ETH to, from ETH, mainnet over to the, base chain, for Coinbase wrapped ETH when I want to do, DeFi on the base chain. That's where communities help. Or if for whatever reason, it's not going through. And, you're like, what gas do I need for this transaction? Because sometimes that can be confusing too, is, what token do I need to pay the gas? Or it's not going through and I'm getting this error. Those are the things that our communities are great for. But again, if they're telling you a specific address to send it to, it's scam. If they're asking for your, seed phrase, it's a scam. And, finding people that you trust is key, so I definitely suggest, finding a good community.
Yeah, super important, especially as you're getting started. But even after you start building a skill set, just to have a group of people to talk to about crypto and DeFi, where that's what that group is focused on.
Well, your live calls are great for that. Twice a day, you do those.
Well, thank you, Mike. Thank you.
No, they are, because at least you're able to see who you're talking to. They're not fully doxed. I mean, David, it's his real name. I know David, I know his face, and I'm on those calls sometimes too. So, it doesn't have to be in Discord. It can be face to face. On live calls. That's a great community too. I mean, the DeFi University, it's all free. All of these lessons that we're going through, all the quizzes. David, it used to be paid. He opened it up and made it all free because he wants to help people out there navigate all of this stuff that we're talking about. The only thing he charges for is the live calls. 2 hours a day, 2 separate calls. It's $97 a month. If you're investing any sort of money into DeFi, well worth it. So anyway,
I think having a community, having a group of people that you can show up to every single day and be able to ask questions of, dude, it's super valuable. It's super valuable. So let's see what Cletus has to say about this.
The weak link is so often the human or the app, not the underlying protocol. All right, so let's do a quick recap of the big takeaways here. First, that chain of hashes makes changing the past basically impossible without visibly breaking the entire chain. Second, a 51% attack, while possible in theory, is just economically insane to try on a large network. Third, the size and scale of the network are absolutely critical for its security. And finally, and this is probably the most important for you, the biggest risks are usually in user error or the applications you use, not the core blockchain itself. And that really leaves us with one final thought to chew on. We've pretty much established that the foundational layer, the chain itself, is incredibly strong. But as this technology keeps growing, the real question for the future is this: are all the applications and services being built on top of that foundation just as strong?
Yeah, that's a great question to ask because, I've used, oh man, hundreds of dApps. Maybe it might be even up to 1,000. Probably not. I think it's in the hundreds.
Yeah.
And of all of these dApps that I've used, some of them are kind of shady. Like sometimes the user experience, is not the best, and a lot of these dApps get exploited. There have been plenty of dApps that I have used where I got off of the dApp, and then weeks or months later, I heard about some type of an exploit, some type of a
Yeah.
hack. So it's really never the underlying chain. If I had to think back, when was the last time an underlying chain had problems? Of the big three, it must have been Solana in 2024
Mm.
when the memes were going crazy, and
Hmm.
what that meme transaction volume was doing was
Oh,
driving up the gas costs.
ah,
So yeah, you remember that?
yeah.
Oh man, so that's the last time I remember, a big chain actually having issues. Sui has had some dApps have problems, but they've all had dApps that have had problems, except for Bitcoin. Bitcoin doesn't have any dApps built on top of it. So yeah, that's a good question to end on. Let's go ahead and take a look here at lesson 8: different blockchains explained. Oh, you know what? The video content for lesson 8 is right here. I've got to bring it up from Notebook. Let me just go ahead and grab that lesson 8. This was the last one that I had to upload into the lesson files, but we can play it from in here anyway. Okay, lesson 8, the blockchain highway.
Ever find yourself looking at the world of crypto and just thinking, wait a second, if this stuff is the future, why are there so many different blockchains? Why isn't there just one? Well, if that question's ever crossed your mind, you are in exactly the right place. Today, we're going to clear that all up. Okay, so here's our game plan. First, we'll kick things off with a really simple analogy called the blockchain highway. Then we'll meet the 3 biggest players out there. After that, we're going to uncover this fundamental rule of the road known as the impossible triangle, see how some clever folks are building workarounds, and finally, wrap it all up by figuring out how you can choose the right route for you. So let's start with that core idea. You really don't need a degree in computer science to get why there are so many blockchains. Nope. All you really need is a solid grasp of something we've all felt in our bones: traffic. And this
Wait, we felt what?
Damn you, Cletus.
Look at us.
big
Stop,
question.
stop
And it
drinking the shine.
feels like having one single universal network for everything would be way more efficient. But the truth is, just like in the real world, different trips need different kinds of roads. And that's the key right there. That's the whole idea. Just think of every blockchain as a different kind of highway, each one engineered for a very specific job. Some are built like a fortress for maximum security, others are built like a racetrack for pure speed, and some are trying to find that perfect balance in between.
Mike, I kind of think of individual chains not just like their own separate racetracks. I tend to think of them almost like they're separate banks. And then, the applications that are built on top of those banks are kind of like new products that that bank offers. And then when
Mhm.
you want to move money from one bank to another, you need to bridge. And that's kind of like, the ACH or the wire transfer. So I think of it that way. What do you think about that analogy?
Well, so I mean, I like it. The thing that comes to my mind when we get on this topic is use case. I get
Yep.
is probably the best way for me to describe it. But it really depends on the use case. What is the pain point? What is the uh, the service that they're offering? Because yes, some of them are built for speed. They might not be as secure. Some of them have very high security, but they're very slow. But it depending on how what you're trying to do with it, security might be paramount. It might not be something that you can compromise. Speed. It's there's still some security there, but speed. If you're say that you're making a gaming, something built on blockchain for gaming, and you want to move NFTs like the skins that give you different outfits or different guns or something like that. Not as important to have security, but it very important to have speed. Now, if you're doing something in the financial sector, security is paramount. If you're moving, if it's a dollar or if it's billions of dollars, you have to have security. If you're dealing with medical records, need to have security. You might need to have a little bit of speed though. So maybe, you use a chain that has that balance of security and speed. So that's kind of what comes to my mind when they start talking about the trilemma and, in that topic.
Oh, definitely. Yeah. So, I'm thinking about individual chains. So
Mhm.
right here, a very secure chain, I think the number one is Bitcoin. So for security, I give Bitcoin, an A plus plus rating here. But for speed, I give it like a D minus.
Oh,
Like,
But
yeah.
but like KTA, KTA has done so far a very good job. I mean, speed is off the charts, and security so far has been great as well. They've had no compromises, that no exploits, no anything. So they've done a really good job, and price wise, they recently they've been very stable. So, but yeah, like I
Yeah.
said,
Yeah. So what about some of the layer twos, like so for Ethereum, I would
like
say that
base.
Ethereum's, yeah, like Base or, that's a great example, or even Plasma, very fast, very cheap. So for mainnet, for Ethereum mainnet, the layer one, I would say security is, A plus plus. Speed, maybe something more like a C plus for speed,
Mhm.
especially with the upgrades recently.
Yeah,
But if you think about something like the base chain, well, it borrows the security from the layer one. So I would say it gets an A rating for
yeah,
security, but then for speed, it also gets an A rating.
yeah.
So yeah, that's those layer twos go a long way to solve that trilemma.
Well, what's your thoughts on Vitalik's recent comments about layer twos? Then,
He's absolutely right.
Mhm.
There's been this proliferation of layer twos, and many of them are extractive. They basically, drain TVL and fees from mainnet, but don't really provide any benefit. You could even make that case for the big layer twos like Base and Arbitrum, but I think
Yeah,
to a much lesser extent. Um, so yeah, I think as Vitalik is able to build out the mainnet and make it faster, then the need for layer twos becomes lower and lower. So the big problem with mainnet has always been that it's really slow and that it's really expensive.
yeah.
But it's becoming much less expensive and it's getting faster. So yeah, maybe in the not too distant future, the need for layer twos won't be as great. So I operate on Arbiter, I operate on Base, I operate on Plasma. I mainly am on mainnet. So I live on Ethereum, and I've seen the upgrades. The upgrades are great. They're great to see. I've also seen upgrades on Solana. Solana has upgraded its chain really since the meme coin fiasco in 2024. But yeah, the tokenomics are important to understand too. Let's continue on. Let's see what Cletus has to say about this.
There's just no single best highway for every car and every journey. So check this out. Here you can see that basic trade-off in action. The highway on the left, that's your interstate. It's like the road you'd use for an armored truck carrying millions of dollars. You want it to be slow, deliberate, you want lots of toll booths and checkpoints for security, right? But for just a quick trip, like, say, grabbing a coffee, you'd take the road on the right, that fast, cheap local expressway, where all that heavy-duty security would just be overkill. All right, let's move on and see how this whole highway analogy stacks up against the big names you've probably heard of. These are kind of like the main digital interstates that everyone's driving on today. First up, the original gangster, Bitcoin. This is our armored truck route. It is, by far, the most secure, most battle-tested digital highway on the planet. And that makes it absolutely perfect for storing value. Think of it like a digital Fort Knox. But all that security comes at a price. It's slow, it can be expensive, so you're probably not going to use it for small, everyday stuff. Then we've got Ethereum. Now think of this one as a smart highway. It doesn't just move stuff from point A to point B. No, it lets you build things on top of it. We're talking entire financial systems, apps, NFTs, you name it. This programmability makes it incredibly powerful. But just like a busy city highway at 5 p.m., it can get super congested and really, really expensive.
The one thing about mainnet and Ethereum in general that still bothers me a little bit is that when there are periods of extreme volatility, especially to the downside, a little bit less so to the upside, but especially to the downside. Let's say, ETH is down 10% in a day, or, maybe closer to 15% at one point in a day, like it was recently. It can become difficult to get transactions to complete without having to up your gas like massively. So I think that still needs to be solved for, that even during periods of high volatility, the gas can't, they need to make it so that gas during high vol is just like gas during low vol. I don't know how you solve for that, but it can be a real pain when things really start moving and you want to submit a transaction and you look at gas and it's 100 times higher than it would have been just the day before. So,
and that brings us to Solana, our local expressway. This highway was built for one thing and one thing only: speed. It is ridiculously fast and super cheap, which makes it perfect for things like gaming or high-frequency trading, where every millisecond counts. So what's the trade-off? Well, it's newer. And to get all that speed, it's a bit less decentralized than the other two. This little table just brings it all together beautifully, doesn't it? You can see clear as day the different choices each network made. Bitcoin went all in on security, sacrificing speed. Ethereum focused on being programmable, but that can lead to high fees. And Solana? It aimed for peak performance, and to do that, it gave up a little bit of decentralization.
I think it gave up a lot of it, decentralization.
Yeah.
So, why do these trade-offs even exist? I mean, why can't we just build one perfect highway that's incredibly secure, lightning fast, and completely decentralized? Well, it all comes down to this really tough engineering problem in the world of blockchain.
Okay, let's quickly define what we're talking about here. First up is security. This is the bedrock. In our highway analogy, this is the strength of the pavement itself, the guardrails, the cameras, everything that stops a bad actor from messing with the road. Next, we have decentralization. This is all about who owns and maintains the highway. Is it one giant corporation, or is it run by thousands of independent people all over the world? You see, the more people involved, the harder it is for any one person or group to shut it down or abuse their power. And finally, there's scalability. This one's simple. How many lanes does the highway have, and what's the speed limit? How much traffic can it handle at once before everything just grinds to a halt? So, here it is. Here's the kicker. The golden rule is that you can pretty easily build a highway with any two of those three things, but getting all three at once, that is the holy grail, the fundamental challenge.
Trilemma.
That's the trilemma, right? And that's what Vitalik is working to solve.
Example, if you want more decentralization with tons of people maintaining the road, it takes longer for everyone to agree on things, and that slows down the network scale. It's this constant balancing act, often called the blockchain trilemma.
But engineers absolutely love a good challenge. So if you can't solve this trilemma on the main highway itself, what do? Well, you build an express lane right on top of it.
Those are the layer twos.
And this is the whole idea behind what are called layer 2s. They're basically separate, much faster networks that are designed to work hand in hand with a super secure main chain, like Ethereum. In effect, they get to borrow all the security of the main highway while building their own super fast express lanes for traffic. So here's how it works, and it's pretty clever. Imagine instead of every single car stopping to pay a toll on the main highway, you have this massive carpool. A layer 2 basically bundles hundreds, even thousands of transactions together off on the side. It processes them all super quickly and cheaply in its own express lane. Then it just posts one single summary of all those trips back to the main, secure highway. It saves a ton of time and a ton of money. Okay, so we've looked at the map, we've seen the main highways, and we've even checked out those slick express lanes. So now for the big question. How do you actually decide which digital road you should take?
Well, it really just comes down to your specific situation. You got to ask yourself a few questions. What am
Well,
I
you
trying to do?
Yeah, what are you looking to achieve? Are you looking for security? Do you want to play video games? Are you looking to gamble on meme coins? Like, what are you trying to do?
do you
That's
need
going to
speed? Do
determine.
you need security? Do you need scalability? What is it that, is going to be important for your project
Yeah, exactly.
or your
Am I
DApp?
spending my life safe?
Yeah, you're right. Your DApp, so I would look at this and think, okay, each of these buildings might be an individual DApp. And I've got to figure out, okay, what is it that I want to do? If I'm looking to play a video game, well, then I'll probably be on Solana or Sui.
Yeah.
If I'm looking to, or maybe AVAX, if I'm looking
AVAX is a
to,
really big gaming. I mean, they launched that on the grid or off the grid, and
right. Yeah,
and very, very successfully, I might add.
exactly. Yeah, off the grid, man. Didn't they? Don't they have like at one point they had 1 million, concurrent like players on there?
I
Uh,
believe so. I mean, it looks like a really cool game. I know
it
Taco,
does.
he was, big into crypto gaming. He had a show for a while and, he kind of dipped off. He moved back home and, kind of got out of streaming. But yeah, when it first came out, he was playing that a bunch and it looked like a really cool kind of first person or third person shooter game. And it was flawless. And it was, it was a Web3 game. So, all that functionality that I was talking about where, whenever you earn, like skins, because those of you that game know that, some people, I don't, but some people spend a lot of money, not just to buy the game, but to buy like those little packages to where you have different outfits and different guns and, all that kind of stuff. And once that game goes away, you lose all that. And so what, blockchain's trying to do is basically make those NFTs, non-fungible
Right.
tokens to where when you buy them, it's like that Ready Player 2 movie. You get to keep those, and when the new game comes out, you can keep those, almost like you had them in a binder, and, when that new game launches, you can use your old skins, you can use your old weapons, and and you can buy them and sell them and trade them, and, you actually own those things. So, I think it's a really cool use case.
I think it's super cool too. So that off the grid game, my understanding of it was that, and I think it's on AVAX. It is on AVAX.
Yep.
But my understanding was that all of the like buyable items you had to buy with the guns token, and there's also an on ramp built into
Yes.
the game, so you can use a credit card to on ramp into crypto, and then you get that guns token. You can buy all of these different in game items. But let's say that you're in the game and you get killed by someone. I thought that the player that killed you or anyone could pick up all of your loot, your items, man.
That's on you at the time, I believe so. Because I mean, that's kind
Yeah,
of the way it is. That there's a game that me, Jeff, Ellie, Jay, and a bunch of other people in our community play called Arc Raiders, and that's the way it is. Is anything that you're wearing at the time, unless it's in your prison wallet, then you get killed. They can basically take it off of you. But your stuff that you have, kind of back at your home base, you get to keep all that. So to me, that's just realistic. If you're out there and somebody takes you out, it's like, okay, what kind of goodies you got?
yeah, man. Well, I mean, you could turn that into a job. You play video games 24/7 and just pick up as many valuable items as you possibly can. But it also determines which chain you're going to be on. If you're going to be playing off the grid, you'll be on AVAX. If you're going to play, some other game on Sui or Solana, that'll determine the chain that you're going to be on.
Mhm.
If you want to be on mainnet and deposit USDC on Aave, and just be super secure, well, then you're going to be on mainnet. If you want to explore the city, so to speak, of dApps on Ethereum's layer twos, then you might, pick some of the layer twos like Arbitrum or Base or Plasma. So
For
yeah,
me, when it comes to DeFi, pretty much the only chains that I use is either ETH or which is recent because of the improvements they've made with gas, and Base. That's really where I stick to when it comes to my DeFi, just because I've had zero issues with those.
right. Yep, those are great chains.
Savings for the next decade? Then you probably want the most secure highway out there, like Bitcoin. Or are you maybe playing a video game that needs hundreds of fast, tiny transactions? Then you'll want that expressway, like Solana. The right choice completely depends on your goal.
And that's really the most important thing to walk away with here. This technology is still so young. New highways are being built all the time, old ones are getting upgraded. But by understanding those fundamental trade-offs, that dance between security, decentralization, and speed, you've basically got a compass that'll help you navigate any new road or new development that comes your way. So as these digital roads keep getting paved and upgraded and connected to each other, the choice isn't really about finding the one best highway anymore. It's about picking the right route for your specific journey. The real question is, now that you understand the map a little better, which route are you going to explore first?
Cool. Awesome. So let's learn a little bit about how to actually explore those routes. And so, Mike, what I'm sharing with everyone now is DeFi Llama. And I think
One of
that,
the best tools out there when it comes to exploring these chains, the amount of TVL, the amount of fees they're generating. When it comes to data, I'm a data slut. When it comes to when it comes to data, again, DeFi Llama and RWA.xyz is my go-to every morning when I'm putting together our newsletter, just to see what the markets are doing. It's a great indication on if there is positive growth going on these chains and on these protocols, or if that if TVL is being sucked out of the market, like RWA.xyz. You can look right there; it's up and to the right. There's just constant tokenization of real world assets going on, stocks, bonds, commodities, all of that. No matter, no matter what the price has been doing, the price has been dipping on a lot of these projects, a lot of these major projects, Bitcoin, Ethereum, all of it. Yet we see nothing but growth in RWAs. DeFi, it's pulled back a little bit, but relatively speaking, not as much as the market has pulled back.
yeah, and these numbers are going to keep going up. The RWA, all of this, we're going to see tens of billions, if not hundreds of billions of dollars of treasuries come on chain over the next year or two. I think this is just going to explode here. Now, DeFi Llama might be a little bit more valuable if you're looking to use dApps. Over here on RWA.xyz, this is still valuable if you're looking to gain exposure to any of these dApps, any of these chains here. But
it's how I found Canton.
Yeah, but a lot of these assets, a lot of these RWAs are gated. Like you need to be an institutional
investor,
or accredited, or minimums. Many of the minimums are like $100,000. So this might be like really useful to know. This is a great source of data. And I'm actually talking to one of the guys on RWA.xyz sales team today about getting access to their API so that I can do some cool stuff with that data. But if you're just looking to, begin your journey in DeFi by using some of these chains, I would start over here on DeFi Llama.
Absolutely.
And once you're on DeFi Llama, just click on chains and just literally like scroll through and start just taking a look at all the different chains. So if we just take a look at the top 20, notice the very top, Ethereum, 1,700 protocols built on top of Ethereum. And here's Solana, number 2, 458 protocols built on top of Solana. Take a look at the DeFi TVL though. So Ethereum has a DeFi TVL that's nearly 10 times bigger than that of Solana. So, lots of dApps, lots of DeFi TVL, but this is a layer one. So a little bit more expensive to operate, a little bit slower. Solana is, the faster, cheaper layer one that you would need to bridge to. BSC is Binance Smart Chain. I think they rebranded to BNB Chain, not quite sure, but so BNB Chain, over 1,000 protocols and over $5 billion in DeFi TVL.
Me personally, I just don't trust Binance.
Me neither.
That's just me.
I hear you. I don't either. So maybe we could take a look at Base and Arbitrum. Let's take a look at Base. Let's see what's going on the Base chain. So, Mike, what do you know about Base? This is the Coinbase chain.
Oh, I know quite a bit about Base. What you want to know?
All your Base belong to us.
It's all about the base. It's all about that base.
Yeah. Yeah, man. Take a look at these protocols. Wasn't there some type of an exploit on one of these lending protocols like Moonwell recently or something like that?
There was. It's been a while. Aerodrome had one, but they actually came out, and I don't know if they made everyone exactly whole, but they did have it to where they paid people back for the majority, if not all, of the losses from that exploit. That I can't say enough, and we'll be talking a little bit tonight on Crypto and Chill about Aerodrome, some new alpha that I found, but it's just one of the most responsibly run protocols that I've found, especially on Base, and the different, not functionality, but the different offerings that they are rolling out as far as the institutional vaults, and just there's so much stuff that's about to come out, especially with the launch of the new platform, that I can't help but be hugely bullish. And full disclosure, it's my largest holding, but I'm a little bit of a degen in that aspect. But yeah, Base, the reason that I love Base so much is, one, that as far as the chain goes, I've never had any issues with security, with anything. Again, like David said, those exploits were those protocols, not the underlying chain. It wasn't Ethereum, it wasn't the Base chain, it was those protocols. But yeah, that's my
Now, Mike, one of my favorite things to look at over here on DeFi Llama when I'm taking a look at individual protocols is their income statements. Because, these things are businesses. And so that means that, they need to actually make money. That might be a strange concept in the world of DeFi, a protocol actually making money and then distributing that money to token holders in some way. And so it's just always really interesting to take a look at these income statements when they're available for protocols.
So where did you go to just so people out there can know, how did you find that on DeFi Llama?
Sure. So let me go ahead and start from the beginning. So if I'm on the home page, then the first thing I got to do is go to chains. And then once I'm on chains, I wanted to go ahead and scroll down and find the Base chain. Okay. So I'm going to click through to the Base chain. And then from there, I'm going to scroll down again, and I'm looking now at protocols. So I'm looking at protocols on the Base chain. So I want to take a look at Aerodrome. It's native to Base. Notice it says only one chain. So when you see a dApp that says only one chain, that means it's native to that chain and doesn't exist on any others. So we'll click through. There's Aerodrome. I'm going to scroll down here, and here's the income statement.
Nice.
Right there. And so you can actually, a DeFi Llama has a public and free API. So you can pull all of these data and throw it into, a database of your own. You can, do all sorts of visualizations on this, manipulate this in any way you want. Really, really cool stuff you can do. So I think that's time, Mike. We ran out of time. A good call starts and ends on time. But yeah, man. So tomorrow, we're going to go through lesson 9. And lesson 9 is the start of module 3 about crypto wallets. So we're going to learn about, what is a crypto wallet? We're going to learn about, in lesson 10, public keys and addresses. And then if we have time to get to a lesson 11, we'll take a look at private keys and seed phrases. So we're getting ready. We're building our foundation and getting ready to take our first steps in crypto.
Sounds great. Yeah, no, it's hold on. Yeah, so if you are interested tonight, and David, I mean, you're more than welcome to join us too. We're just going to be kind of talking about a lot of these protocols, and I'm going to be trying to go a little bit in depth about a lot of these tokens, because I've really started diving deep into the projects I'm invested in, and that aspect of how the revenue, how the profits, how any sort of liquidity makes its way back to token holders. And I'm really thinking about if we have any kind of escape pump or the markets start to pump, and some of the projects that I'm more bullish on that have that aspect, I'm thinking about rotating out of some of the other projects I'm in and just loading up on those, just for the simple fact that I really think that is going to be the projects that have a better chance of surviving into the future. And even if you're part of a project, like, I mean, I use it all the time, XRP, a lot of bullish stuff is happening for Ripple, but it's not necessarily happening for XRP. So there's a link, Chainlink. I have some questions about Chainlink. I'm very bullish on the project. They're partnering with a lot of really big names and doing a lot of really big things with Swift, and they're a part of the Canton network. But how does that success translate to the token holders? What drives the price of the token up because of that? It's like, again, it's great. These aren't securities. These aren't stocks. There's no guarantee that price goes up because of the success of that company.
Right.
So I really want to dive into that tonight. But yeah, if you want to join us.
Yeah, so we can take a look at income statements.
Exactly.
it'll be fun.
Exactly. And then connect that income statement to, okay, how does that translate to token price go up, or some sort of dividends being paid, or or some sort of burn mechanism that helps.
So Mike, I think what we're all going to learn tonight is that most of these tokens are more like memes than anything else.
Or a baseball card. Or
because if you've got like the underlying protocol, that's a business in many cases. These are businesses. And most of them actually do generate revenue. But if that revenue really has nothing to do with the token price, it doesn't go back to the token holders at all, then
you're a fan.
What is the token? And if the token has like a multi-billion-dollar market cap, like many of these tokens do, but it's completely disconnected from the fundamentals of the business, the protocol itself, well, then what are you holding? You're kind of holding a meme. It's basically a meme. Yeah.
You're holding a baseball card of your favorite, sports figure. Their success has almost nothing to do with the price of the baseball card, unless you're selling it to somebody else who's a fan and is willing to pay you more than you bought it for.
Right.
That's it.
I want to actually earn cash flows, and
exactly.
not just own a baseball card,
Exactly. No, and yeah. So yeah, we'll be diving into that tonight. But appreciate you, David, and everyone. Have a great day, and we'll see you tonight. Till then, Veteran Crypto out.